Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully you've had some time with the footage and you've looked at cutting it into what you feel is a rough cut and you haven't rushed it too much, which is why I didn't want to do it on the video, because I wanted to spend, at least half an hour to an hour kind of really just looking at it and doing it properly, giving it my attention, even though it's a stock piece of footage. I wanted to try and do it justice. So hopefully you've done the same. Here's where things get quite interesting, because we're going to now draw all the links between our main editing principles and the actual editing tools in the software. So we're linking the theory and the practice here. And those of you who know me know that I love a good acronym. Helps me remember stuff as well. And the acronym that I've created here for the theory and the practical sides of editing are the words media arts. So the word media, these are our editing principles. Each letter stands for the following words. M is for motivated. Okay, so is there a sense of motivation around the logic, the order of events as you see them unfold on the screen? Is there a logic and reason behind the choice of where the cuts are and the clips themselves being there? In other words, is there cause and effect? E for exact. Are the technical edits exactly where they need to be in relation to the audio and the video? Have we experimented to some degree with the actual timings, or you might say E for execution, the actual execution of the edits? And D is for dynamics. Is there variation in the pacing and the rhythm of the edits so that it all doesn't feel too samey and it flows well and it picks up where it needs to pick up and it settles where it needs to settle? Dynamics, great descriptive word. Okay, I for inventive is the next letter. Can you create new perspectives? Are you able to show something, to unearth a gem that's buried, that's hidden from the director, hidden from everyone else, because you as the editor are the one to get to see all the little nuances? And there is one in this footage here. There's a real gem, and if you use it properly, you can really bring extra perspective and emotion into this seemingly kind of straightforward tale. Now the last letter, A, is for articulate. Can you articulate the vision, and is it clear? And this is sort of the highest echelon of these different layers, because you can try through experimentation and through all of the other principles, but you kind of have to try and make the best of the footage that you've got to make it as clear as possible. And because this footage is out of context and we only have this particular scene, it's hard to get a clear vision, but you are okay, you're permitted to reinterpret this footage in your own way, because this is just for learning and development. So if you can articulate a sense of clarity at the end here, you've succeeded. And that is kind of the most difficult thing that would be like the sort of first, if this was a marked piece. Can you articulate that clarity of vision to a piece that, quite honestly, doesn't necessarily have it inherently? Okay, so that's the word media spelt out in editing principles: motivated, exact, dynamics, inventive, and articulate. And the word arts, a bit of a stretch, it's A-R-T-S, but that is all the how-to, which is adding to the timeline, removing, reordering, trimming, and slipping in the timeline. And I put that at the top of the shortcut guide that I've made for Media Composer, because I think it's so fundamentally important, just in terms of approaching the software, which is why I've put it into the guide here. And I've put down notes on how to do these things in Media Composer. But the principles are the same. These are the main 5 things that you do to try and achieve your main editing principles. And the techniques we also touched upon earlier, you might be using J&L cuts and jump cuts and cutaways, cutting on action, cross-cutting, stuff like that. Maybe montages or match cuts, but not likely, to be honest. We're all serving the editing principles with our our approach here in the software. So to start off with, I thought it might be interesting, just as a little learning exercise, to take a look at I know Brandon feels the same way. I've heard Brandon talk about this. Ping-pong editing, and it's just the number one thing that goes wrong and is just a real killer for the story. So I'm going to show you what ping-pong editing is, and hopefully you'll get a sense of why it's not that great. Okay, so I'm just going to play this, see what you think.
Pack it up, boys.
Huh?
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't want it.
That's what he said.
But it's already off the truck.
We'll put it back on, genius.
But it's Friday up.
I know.
We'll have to go all the way back to the warehouse.
And peak hour traffic.
I know.
It's the semis, Ivan. We'll miss kickoff.
If the man doesn't want it...
Okay, so we have, an interesting scene here because the delivery guys, they want to go and watch the match. The boss probably does too. He just can't show it because he's being professional in front of the customer. But what we have is a ping pong conversation where it's just cutting straight back and forward. And it's boring, it's repetitive. There's no dynamics in this because, because of the delivery of the lines, the cuts are all kind of evenly spaced and it doesn't really grab us, it doesn't grab our imagination. We're missing the all-important reaction shots from the boss as the delivery men are complaining. We're just seeing him react. We're missing the nuance. We're missing the bits where he lets his guard down. That's where the real interest of the story is. And there's different ways that you can, go about fixing. If you've reached this sort of a result in sections of the footage, one of the things that I like to do is to mute clips. So here I've got all of the two shot of the delivery guys on V2 and the boss on V1. I'm just going to deselect link the clips there because I might want to keep their audio. Let's say if they're saying something, I want to capture his reaction. I'm not interested in, because it's fairly obvious that they've got not much to bring to the table other than just being annoyed that they want to watch sports. Now, initially, you might find them threatening, the way they kind of turned around and give him those looks. But that doesn't develop, so we're not going to linger on that. We're not going to stay on them. So what I want to do here is just, I can start muting clips that I don't feel are really serving the story. And I'm going to start using the roller tool to extend the footage of the boss underneath, for example. Let me play this.
That's what he said.
But it's already off the truck.
We'll put it back on, genius.
And there might be times where you don't feel that you're getting anything extra, but it's all about playing around with the footage and just seeing where are the reactions that we want.
But it's Friday up.
So we're not getting anything too much there. I'm just going to see what else is going on here.
We'll have to go all the way back to the warehouse.
And peak hour traffic.
Okay, now that is a crucial bit there. That gives away a lot of information that's unspoken, which is, to me, where the real joy of cinema is. It's all the unspoken things, all the unsaid things. A glance can mean so much, and if we miss that glance, we're missing a lot of the dynamics between the boss and the customer. You can really see so much emotion there in this glance. He's looking back at the customer who's very nonchalant, and we're seeing a dissonance in his decision-making ability here. We're seeing a dissonance in his brain between him wanting to go, but also being a great professional, boss and running a company. So it kind of goes deep at this point for this guy. Let me just show you, I've kind of spent a bit more time editing this to what I would call a more satisfactory standard. Instead of it ping-ponging, watch the way the conversation flows now between everyone.
Pack it up, boys.
Huh?
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't want it.
That's what he said.
But it's already off the truck.
We'll put it back on, genius.
But it's Friday up.
I know.
We'll have to go all the way back to the warehouse.
And peak hour traffic.
I know.
So we still have a touch of ping-ponging, but it's not enough to get us into that predictable expectation that it's going to be dull. It's just enough to break up the fact that we're seeing his reaction very much separate from what they're saying and somewhat removed. So like I say, I've got that really important shot is where he's looking to the side, but also we've got another one where he's looking down. He just glances down for a moment. And again, that's really important because what's happening in this character's mind, look, he's looking down. He doesn't want to be there. Okay, yes, he's doing something with a bit of paper that he'd probably need to do anyway. But the sense that we get as a viewer is that he's looking down because he doesn't want to be in that situation. There's something about that situation that he just wishes was over. And if we don't have that in there, we're missing the story. So you have to, even though you want to mainly get all the dialogue in there, you don't want to become subservient to the dialogue to such an extent that you're missing the actual reactions. The reactions are so important. It's just the same if this was live TV. You need to get all those reaction shots in there, which is why a live television director, you know, they're really good at picking up on these things. Let me just play that bit again where he glances down, because it's very subtle, but you can see how important it is.
Huh?
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't want it.
That's what he said.
There's a little pause as well. He doesn't want it. He looks back up. He doesn't want to necessarily say what he says, but you can see a dissonance in him. And that's really important. That really cuts to, you know, the narrative, and the motivation there is very, very strong. And it's heightening the sense of what's going to come next. And we don't want to chop that off. It's really a balance, which is why the word dynamic is so important, because if things are happening, we want to capture the sense of rhythm. We want to capture a fluidity of continuity, cutting on action. But we don't want to lose, we don't want that to override a nuance. I would always prefer a nuance, to be honest with you. You know, a lot of real art house cinema that really pushes boundaries, it's all nuance, and it really tests you, it challenges you as a viewer, but you really get back your what patience you put in. You know, I think of like Rosetta by the Dardenne brothers. Movies like that really hold you to what they're doing, and it really heightens your sense of perception. So a lot of movies in, you know, mainstream are very fast on the cutting on action, and they almost just continuously cut out through the entire feature on action, and it can be slightly just you know, a bit dull, a bit not having much nuance. So that being said, I've done a rough cut here that tries to balance out the movement and the fluidity of this short with a sense of nuance, and I want you to see if you can emulate this, or maybe you can even outdo it. You know, I'm sure some of you can really do this justice really well. But the point is, you're maintaining a motivation. You're being exact. You're keeping dynamics. That's really important. You're being inventive, and the overall result is articulated in a clear way. And I can tell you that I had a couple of problems with this. There's one bit, for example, where it feels like it jumps too much, and that goes back to 1917, right? 1917 feels like one long take, even though it's not. Where you've got moments that feel like they're jumps, these are what's called ellipses in the edit. Now, every cut is an ellipse, but if you have one that really feels that it stretches your sense of time and space, not in a good way, then, you know, you're really having a struggle, a stretch with the footage at that point. So watch out for that. And there is a problem with particularly the bit where the coverage is quite poor when it goes from the window to him actually speaking through the doorway. And you can see how I've tried to just bring you out very carefully from his dark interior world to the external world. I haven't jarred you outside. I've transitioned you through the boss, through the customer, out the door to the delivery, and the real gem of a shot comes in later on. So I'm just going to play this, and notice how I attempted to be inventive as possible with this footage. Near the end, I tried to give it a sense of conclusion, clarity, the articulate vision. I tried to invent that from nothing, using what essentially was the end of a take where he's sat down on his chair, that, you know, so not necessarily was slated for that position, but I tried to end it in such a place where he disengages, he removes himself from what's happening, and he goes back to his inner dark world on the chair. So you can even see that the frame there is almost identical at the end, but I've used a different segment from that master clip. So take a look at this, and this is what I came up with. I'll just take it back to the start, enable the topmost layer of video that I want visible, and play.
Delivery! Delivery!
I see you there, boss. So you want a refund? Okay, you're the boss. Back it up, boys.
Huh?
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't want it,
That's what he said.
but it's already off the truck.
We'll put it back on, genius.
We'll have to go all the way back to the warehouse.
And peak hour traffic.
I know.
We'll miss kickoff.
Listen, if the man doesn't want it, he doesn't have to take it.
Oh, but it's Friday out.
I know.
So I actually got a bit of lag there. I think that's because I'm using OBS to capture the screen and send at the same time, so my computer struggled a bit, but hopefully you got the sense of that there. I thought the key things were to really allow for the sense of space at the start, to allow for that dark interior world to establish itself as the core of the scene, and to make sure that there was action cutting back to the window so it didn't feel repetitive, and to capture the hesitant kind of attempted politeness of this gentleman here. And there's a bit of a J cut here,
So you want a refund?
just so that it tries to pull you towards the doorway in a more subtle sense, because that was the bit where I felt it was quite thin in terms of the coverage, and that was the most difficult bit that I felt was most challenging. But crucially, once they begin their conversation involving the two delivery guys, I felt it was really important to, like I say, capture his dissonance, but also at some point in the conversation introduce the shot of the customer just as a once-off. I didn't overuse it, but I introduced it especially before a shot of the boss defending the customer's right to change their mind. And I think that was really important to have it in that order. Like I say, the motivation here is that you've got the shot of the guys complaining, you've got the shot of the customer who's almost fearful. He looks just sort of like he's so withdrawn. And after you're hearing them over him retreating in a sense, after that it then goes to the boss, who glances to show the relationship between the boss is one of respect and professionalism towards the customer, but really to show you the perspective of the customer is on that side where he's just about in that situation. But I don't show him again in that way, even though there's plenty of footage, because I want it to be a very momentary glimpse for him to the outside world before he ultimately just disappears back. As they continue their debate, it moves to this gem of a shot here, which is the diamond in the rough, where you've got a shot from the inside of the house looking out, suggesting he's actually stepped away from the doorway and he's looking out at these guys, looking out at the world at large, maybe feeling the world is a world of chaos, and he just wants to stay in control in the solitary dark state, which is sad. For some reason he's got a backstory, we don't know what it is, but unless we portray his perspective of someone who's really withdrawn from the world at large and looks at the world from a removed sense of distance, who's struggling maybe with the world at large, then we're not capturing the backstory. So that's really the diamond in the rough shot there. And my attempt to be inventive with this footage is to actually show him, to repurpose footage that was shot to show him sitting down, getting up earlier on, to repurpose that to show him actually sitting back down again, to try and give this sense of clarity. And there's an ending here where he rejects that world, because if you don't have some sort of a way of finishing this scene, which is hard to do because they don't give you any footage to finish the scene, it just is left hanging. There's no resolution, nothing happens with the jacuzzi, no decision is made or anything. So that's why I chose to repurpose earlier footage to show him sitting down, so that the story which established on him finishes on him, showing that ultimately he decided to reject this very small but in his terms significant intrusion of the outside world on his life. So that was my attempt to be inventive, to try and articulate the clarity that he's kind of unreachable as a character in this scene, at least because we don't have the context of the short film. We have to work with what we've got. We don't have anything else to end this. So this is a great piece of learning material for this very reason, for these little issues that it presents to you, which is why it's an exercise that I hope you've taken the time to give your full attention. It's a really good exercise here to learn how to control that very delicate shift of attention around a dynamic of different characters. And I've just used some fades just to kind of help transition you from the dark. The first frame of action is going to be a dark frame because I want it to fade up, because it's a dark space it fades into. So yeah, that being said, let's insert the end slate and title and just make sure that we can actually deliver this, just to take us over the line, because we've covered a lot of ground there. So if I go into the VFX title ident, I'm going to just splice this in at the very start, and we've got our title ident there. Now we should really use our text tool to make sure that we're marking our candidate numbers and all that good stuff on the top there. Let's say just pretend I'll just enter something in, and you're going to have your course, whatever it is, and you're going to have more information, for example H.264, HD 1920 by 1080, audio at 48 kilohertz, 24 bits, etc. And show you real quick what you would do at the end. Basically want to zoom out so that you can see your end. I'm going to use my shortcut keys to find the transition at the end there. I'm going to just splice in or overwrite the end slate, and there you go. Okay, so now to deliver this is a question that I get asked because it's not very obvious, and the wording changes depending on the version of Media Composer, but so I just seen a bit of footage there at the end. Let's get rid of that. Almost slipped. Now the timeline matches exactly at the end slate. So to deliver this, right click on the source monitor, and it may say publish or export depending on what version you're on, but publish to local drive, and the settings should default to be what we're after, which is H.264, best quality, it's PCM, WAV, 48 kilohertz, 24 bits, it's stereo, and we can see the estimated size there, and we can save a profile if we want to, but importantly just make sure you name it properly as per the practical submission guide on Moodle Mask that you all should be aware of. And you can set where it goes. You don't want to clog up your desktop, so you put it on your hard drive or the server, and you'd name all the different versions accordingly. So yeah, that's how you go about exporting it. It'll take a little bit of time to do that, and hopefully that helps you see some of the logic in terms of linking the editing principles to the techniques of editing and the actual workflow of those 5 steps in the media arts acronyms. So yeah, let me know if you've got any questions, comments, or tips. Happy to make more videos to show you more detailed specifics.